I've talked a little bit before about how much I enjoy creative writing. I always have, ever since I was a kid, and I've done it off and on throughout pretty much my entire teenage and adult life. Today, I want to talk about one of my favorite writing strategies. And this may come as a little bit of a surprise, but it's actually writing by hand. I learned how to type when I was in 4th grade, and I have to admit, I can type much faster than I can write. I'm pretty slow at handwriting, and my handwriting isn't always very good, whereas my typing has gotten really good over the years. At my top speed, I can go 60 or more words a minute, which, you can get a lot of writing done in a short amount of time at a speed like that. So I definitely type a lot of the writing that I do. But it can also come with its own set of problems. For one thing, typing means using a computer that's connected to the internet. I'm very prone to needing to look something up and just falling down a rabbit hole of research. Half an hour later, I've gone from how did they light rooms indoors before there was electric lighting to what were all of the components involved in hosting a Regency-era ball, and I don't even know how I've gotten there. With writing by hand, you have to make a conscious decision to step away from it and use the internet, which to me helps a lot in terms of keeping my focus. And often what I'll do if I don't know something, if I need to do research or look something up or whatever when I'm writing by hand, is I'll just put in a little placeholder, a little note to remind myself of what it was that I needed to find out. Of course, I could do that when I'm typing as well, but having it that one step removed from Google just makes it a little bit easier to make the note for myself and then move on when it's not something that's really important to know right at this very moment. Another reason that I sometimes prefer to do at least part of my writing by hand as opposed to on the computer is that the computer can strain your eyes. Any kind of backlit screen can strain your eyes more than looking at a physical piece of paper can. And I'm accustomed to using a computer screen for a long amount of time, either to do schoolwork when I was a student, or in the workplace, or, that part of 2020 when the computer was literally your only connection to the outside world, and so everybody was on it all the time. But I do find that when I can do something disconnected from screens, I often prefer to do that, as opposed to using them even more than I have to, because I do find that when I get into the area of using them for, say, 12 or 14 hours a day, my eyes start to get tired and I start to feel just a little bit uneasy. Sometimes I get a headache, so writing by hand can be useful for giving my eyes a break from looking at screens. Another thing that I appreciate about writing by hand is that it makes me slow down. That might sound a little counterintuitive. If you've watched some of my other writing videos, you know that I have done National Novel Writing Month last November, and that I did Camp NaNoWriMo this July, and also set a 50,000 word goal for that. So why do I want to slow down? The thing is that I tend to be, I think there are two kinds of creative writers when it comes to how much you vomit out onto the page in your first draft. There are the people that want to put everything that they can on the page and end up having to cut back a lot when they edit. And then there are the people like myself who just put down the bare bones and then have to go back in and fill things out. I often find that my first drafts are very bare. They don't have a lot of description. They don't have a lot of movement. They have either a lot of action or a lot of dialogue, but not a lot of setting the scene or creating imagery or things like that. When I'm just typing as fast as I can, I often find that the urge to just get an entire scene written, to get all of the dialogue laid out, and to get what the main point of the scene is on paper, and then to move on. Whereas sometimes I find that when I write by hand, I immerse myself in it a little bit more because I'm not speeding through it quite as much. I can linger more on the details, on making sure to include the 5 senses, on giving the reader an idea of where my characters are, are they sitting, are they standing, are they indoors, outside, and so on and so forth. Doing more to create the right mood. I find that when I handwrite, I often get very immersed in that kind of stuff, whereas when I type, I often just speed right past it. The fourth reason that I often like to do at least some of my writing by hand is because the typing process can then become kind of a first round of editing. I don't usually make any big structural changes when I type up what I've written, but I often will change small things like spelling errors, grammatical mistakes, awkward or ambiguous wording, and I find that when I read what I've typed up from handwritten, it often comes across a lot cleaner than when I read what I've just typed up typing at full speed, trying to get as much down as possible. So obviously that's not a big thing on its own, because regardless, I'm going to go back and do more editing later. But it is just one small advantage that I see in having something handwritten before typing it up. And then finally, the fifth reason, and this is actually what got me started doing this, is because I can't take a computer everywhere. I can take a notebook. If I've got, just something like this, little notebook, little pen attached, and blank pages inside where I can write, I can put that in my purse or in whatever bag that I'm carrying, and I can take it with me pretty much anywhere. So like for instance, when I did NaNoWriMo last fall, I did a lot of the writing on my lunch break at work. I didn't want to take my personal laptop into work, and I didn't want to do my writing on a computer at work. But it wasn't a problem at all just to take a notebook to have with me on my break. I've also used notebooks to write while waiting for my order at Starbucks, while waiting for food at a restaurant, and in the car on a road trip. Not, of course, behind the wheel, but as a passenger. And of course, I didn't get nearly as much written as I would have if I'd been at a computer. But that doesn't really matter, because I wouldn't have had a computer in those situations. It would have been very inconvenient to have a computer out. Whereas a notebook is just so much more convenient to bring along and to take out when you've got even 15 or 20 minutes that would otherwise be spent basically doing nothing. Of course, all that being said, I don't do all of my creative writing in a notebook, and I do find the computer to be a lot easier most of the time, as far as, I feel like typing isn't as hard on my hands as handwriting is. And of course, a typed document is so much easier to make changes to, or to look back at what you've already done. So I would certainly find it difficult to write, for example, an entire novel by hand without typing anything up during the process. I find it to be really useful, though, when it comes to just having a short amount of time where a computer wouldn't really be convenient, or at the end of a day when I've already been looking at a computer for a long time, just to have a different way of getting my ideas down that then I can transfer onto a computer later. So I just wanted to share some of my thoughts on handwriting and why I often do it, even though it's slower and more tedious than typing on a computer. If you've tried doing large amounts of writing by hand, feel free to leave a comment letting me know how it went. I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more from me, be sure to subscribe. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday.